Kevin Hart.
So much.
Gotta feel good.
Nice.
Thanks for...
Under the blinding lights of a sold-out arena, Kevin Hart stands barely 5'5", but feels 10 feet tall. Every laugh that echoes back at him is a victory. A small man who turned pain into power, rejection into rhythm, and failure into fuel. But what the world sees, the fame, the fortune, the flawless smile, hides something deeper. Because behind every joke is a wound. Behind every punchline, a scar. He wasn't supposed to make it out of Philadelphia. He wasn't supposed to survive the chaos of his childhood, the heartbreak of betrayal, or the weight of his own mistakes. Yet somehow, through every fall, every controversy, every near-death crash, Kevin Hart kept getting back up, louder, wiser, and funnier than before. This is not just the story of a comedian. It's the story of a man who learned that laughter is not escape, it's survival. So how did Kevin Hart rise from a broken home to become one of the highest-paid entertainers on earth, and nearly lose it all in the process? To understand the laughter, we must first understand the pain. Long before the fame and the laughter, there was just a little boy growing up in North Philadelphia, a place where dreams were small and survival was everything. Kevin Darnell Hart was born on July 6, 1979, into a world that seemed determined to test him. His mother, Nancy Hart, was the rock of the family. A strict, God-fearing woman who worked long hours at the University of Pennsylvania to keep food on the table. She ruled the home with discipline, structure, and faith. His father, Henry Witherspoon, was the opposite. Charming but broken, trapped in the cycle of addiction and absence. When Henry was around, life was unpredictable. When he wasn't, silence filled the house. Kevin found his first stage not in a theater, but in his living room. He discovered that if he could make his mom laugh, just for a second, the weight of everything else disappeared. Comedy became his armor, his weapon, his way to breathe in a world that often felt too heavy for a kid his size. He learned early what it meant to hustle, selling sneakers, doing odd jobs, and cracking jokes wherever people would listen. He didn't have money, power, or connections, but he had timing and heart. "I didn't have a big dream," Kevin would later say. "I just didn't want to be scared anymore." Every hardship, every night his father didn't come home, every tear his mother tried to hide, they all became the blueprint for his humor. The pain didn't break him. It trained him. And soon, that laughter he used to survive would become the key to everything he'd ever wanted. From struggle to spotlight, it all began here. In his early 20s, Kevin Hart was juggling two lives. By day, he sold shoes in a small Philadelphia store, smiling, charming, making customers laugh just enough to distract them from how tired he really was. By night, he chased a different kind of hustle, standing on tiny comedy stages, clutching a microphone, praying the next joke wouldn't die in silence. Back then, he called himself Lil Kev the Bastard. The name was bold, the act, not so much. Crowds heckled him, booed him. Sometimes they just stared in confusion. He bombed so often that one club owner told him, "Kid, maybe comedy isn't for you." But quitting wasn't in Kevin's DNA. Every failure became a lesson. Every awkward silence taught him timing, rhythm, truth. Then came a turning point, meeting Keith Robinson, an older comedian who saw something raw in him. Keith told him, "Stop trying to be funny. Be real." It was advice that changed everything. Kevin dropped the act, dropped the name, and started talking about his real life. His mom, his height, his pain, his relationships. And suddenly people laughed because they recognized themselves in him. He began to find momentum. Small club gigs, local fame, and eventually a few TV appearances. His first big break arrived when he was cast in Undeclared and later in Paper Soldiers, a low-budget film that hinted at what was coming. The paycheck was small, but the dream finally felt real. He had found his voice, the honest, relentless, self-deprecating rhythm that would soon make him unstoppable. The world wasn't laughing yet, but Kevin Hart had finally learned how to make them listen. By the late 2000s, Kevin Hart had gone from bombing at comedy clubs to selling them out. He wasn't just telling jokes anymore. He was telling his story, and millions were listening. In 2009, his stand-up special, I'm a Grown Little Man, turned heads. Then came Seriously Funny, 2010, a national hit that exploded online, making Kevin a household name. But it was Laugh at My Pain, 2011, that changed everything. The show became one of the highest-grossing comedy tours in history, grossing over $15 million. It was raw, brutally honest, and hilarious. He joked about his height, his fears, his failures, things most stars would hide. Kevin turned them into punchlines. Audiences didn't just laugh at him, they connected with him. They saw themselves in his flaws, his hustle, his humanity. Hollywood took notice. Soon he was everywhere, starring in hits like Think Like a Man, Ride Along, and later, Jumanji. He became the go-to name for energy, relatability, and that contagious laugh that could lift any scene. But behind the success was a man who refused to slow down. Kevin was building an empire, touring, acting, producing, promoting, all at once. He launched Heartbeat Productions, expanding his reach beyond the stage, creating opportunities for others like him, comedians who came from nothing but believed in everything. In just a few years, Kevin Hart had gone from that short, funny guy to one of the most bankable entertainers on the planet. Every joke was money, every performance a milestone. Yet fame is a demanding friend, and as the spotlight grew brighter, so did the shadows it cast. Because when the world finally laughs with you, it's easy to forget what it felt like to laugh just to survive. At the height of his success, Kevin Hart seemed untouchable. Sold-out arenas, blockbuster films, millions in the bank. Everything he'd once dreamed of, he had. But the higher you climb, the thinner the air becomes. In 2017, the laughter around Kevin suddenly turned cold. A video surfaced, an alleged affair during his wife Eniku Parish's pregnancy. The world didn't just watch, it judged. The man who built a career on honesty was now being called a hypocrite. Kevin publicly apologized, admitting his failure. I made a bad error in judgment, he said, eyes low, voice shaking. But the damage was done. To his marriage, his image, and his sense of self. The press tore him apart. Memes, headlines, late-night jokes. For once, Kevin Hart wasn't laughing. Then came 2019, the year everything almost ended. A devastating car crash on a California highway left him with a fractured spine. Doctors told him he might never walk the same again. Lying in a hospital bed, his body broken, his fame meaningless, Kevin had to face himself. He later said, "When you're in that hospital, no one cares how famous you are. You're just a man who has to fight to move again." The accident became the pause button he never knew he needed. For the first time, he had to stop running. From his guilt, his ego, his need to always win. Kevin Hart had spent his life turning pain into comedy. Now, he had to learn how to turn pain into change. Before the comeback came the crash. Recovery wasn't just about walking again. For Kevin Hart, it was about learning to stand still, to face the man in the mirror without the noise of the crowd. Months after the accident, Kevin began a long and painful journey of physical therapy. Each step was agony, each movement a victory. He shared pieces of that struggle online, not for sympathy, but for honesty. For the first time, Kevin wasn't trying to be funny. He was just trying to be real. His body healed slowly, but his spirit changed forever. He started questioning everything: fame, success, even the kind of legacy he wanted to leave behind. He wrote his best-selling memoir, I Can't Make This Up, revealing the raw, unfiltered story behind the laughter. He launched his Netflix documentary, Don't F'ka This Up, showing the world the man behind the brand. The flaws, the fear, the humility. He reconciled with Eniku, rebuilding their relationship with brutal honesty and quiet commitment. He found strength in fatherhood, gratitude in stillness, and peace in imperfection. "I used to think success was about never stopping," Kevin said. "Now I know it's about knowing when to slow down." When he finally returned to the stage, the laughter sounded different, deeper, more human. Audiences weren't just laughing at his jokes anymore. They were laughing with him because they saw his scars and respected the man who chose to rise above them. Kevin Hart's comeback wasn't measured in ticket sales or fame. It was measured in forgiveness, patience, and the courage to rebuild his life. One laugh, one truth, one step at a time. From broken bones to an unbreakable soul. Today, Kevin Hart's name stands for more than comedy. It represents perseverance, a blueprint for anyone who's ever been told, "You're not enough." He became one of the highest-earning entertainers in the world, not because of luck, but because of relentless hustle and unapologetic authenticity. Through his company, Heartbeat Productions, he opened doors for a new generation of comedians, writers, and creators, especially those who, like him, came from nothing but believed in everything. His influence reshaped modern comedy. He blurred the line between stand-up, cinema, and self-reflection, proving that vulnerability could be just as powerful as punchlines. He built a business empire that extends into fitness, fashion, podcasts, and film, showing that laughter could be both art and industry. But Kevin's true legacy isn't found in numbers or trophies. It's in the people he inspires. The single parent working 2 jobs. The dreamer who keeps failing but refuses to quit. The kid who uses humor to hide pain but secretly believes there's something bigger waiting for him. Kevin Hart's story reminds them that success isn't about perfection. It's about persistence. It's about falling 7 times and standing up 8, with a smile. As he once said, "Everybody wants to be famous, but nobody wants to do the work. I'm the work." His laughter built an empire, but his resilience built a legacy. For most of his life, Kevin Hart was chasing noise, laughter, applause, headlines, numbers. But in the quiet moments after the chaos, he found something he'd never known before: peace. He started to value stillness over speed. He began his days with workouts, meditation, and time with his family, grounding himself before the world could pull him back into motion. He spent more time at home, cooking breakfast for his kids, joking with Eniku, and simply being present. Through therapy and reflection, he faced the emotional wounds he'd buried under jokes for years: the fear of failure, the guilt from mistakes, the hunger for validation. He learned that true growth isn't about success, it's about surrender. Kevin started speaking publicly about accountability, mental health, and fatherhood. He encouraged others to own their past, not run from it. He donated millions to education and community initiatives, using his influence to lift others, especially underprivileged youth who saw themselves in his story. He said, "At some point, you stop wanting to prove the world wrong. You just start wanting to do right." Today, Kevin Hart stands not just as a comedian, but as a man at peace with who he is. Imperfect, but evolving. He no longer runs from the spotlight. He controls it. And in that light, we don't just see a star, we see a man who finally learned to laugh for all the right reasons. Sometimes, the biggest victory is learning to be still. From the rough streets of North Philadelphia to the world's brightest stages, Kevin Hart's story is not just one of fame, it's one of faith. Faith that every setback carries a lesson. Faith that pain can be rewritten into purpose. And faith that laughter, when born from truth, can heal even the deepest wounds. He turned humiliation into humor, chaos into clarity, and broken moments into bridges that connected millions. In his journey, we see ourselves, our flaws, our failures, and our endless fight to rise again. Kevin Hart taught the world that success is not about how high you climb, but how many times you choose to stand back up. That forgiveness is stronger than perfection, and that the shortest man in the room can still cast the longest shadow. When the lights dim and the laughter fades, what remains is not the fame, but the resilience, the heart behind the heart. So the next time you hear Kevin Hart's laugh echo through a stadium, remember, it's not just comedy. It's survival. It's redemption. It's proof that even in pain, joy can still find a way to speak.